It is Saturday night and you're with the Saturday Five. I'm Adam Cherry and I can promise that we are in for a very lively show tonight. So shall we just crack on with the first debate? I think I'm going to go first, host privilege, why not? So the Spring Statement has come and gone and obviously the Chancellor tried putting a positive gloss on everything. But I don't think her gamble has worked. This year, growth will barely scrape 1%. In fact, we aren't even expected to reach 2% growth at any point in this Parliament. That's supposed to be the government's central mission. So where does that leave us? Well, the Institute for Fiscal Studies warns that unless the economic outlook improves dramatically, tax hikes are coming in the autumn budget. Rachel Reeves has just 9.9 billion. It sounds like a lot, but it's really not. 9.9 billion pounds of wiggle room. That is tiny by government standards. And if growth slows further, she'll have no choice but to raise taxes again. Now, does anyone really need reminding that taxes are already at a post-war high? Because if you do, just look at your council tax from next month. That's going to remind you. Now, far from providing stability, this Spring Statement has only triggered months of speculation over what comes next. Labour MPs don't want benefit cuts. The market doesn't want more borrowing. Voters obviously don't want higher taxes. Something has to give. And believe me, by October, I think we are in for real pain. Anyone disagree?
No, I don't, Adam. The thing that's just so immensely frustrating about this government is that they seem to think that if you just keep saying the word growth over and over again, it will magically happen. But in fact, everything they do is anti-growth. We have known for over 100 years that you create growth by lowering taxes, by reducing the size of the state, and by lessening regulation. And every single thing they do is the opposite of those three things. So I don't understand. If they're just going to say we're going to be a high tax redistribution government, I'd have more respect for that. But why are they saying one thing and then doing another?
I mean, the other thing is that none of these governments, and I do just put them all in the same basket, are looking back at what's going on and thinking, well, hang on a minute, this system that we're using and globally we're using, where we just tax and tax and tax, is, as Will says, not creating growth. But at the same time, services are getting worse and worse and worse. So they're not looking at the system and thinking, hang on, this system is broken. What do we do to change the narrative?
Yeah, I was going to say, on change, I mean, that was their slogan, coming into change. And what we see in government is that they're scared to change anything. As you said, they're tinkering around 9 billion, 5 billion here and there. But the big structural issues, and that's going to mean looking at stuff like pensions, looking at stuff like welfare more generally, these things they're just too scared to touch because they know that ultimately their base rely on these things.
Have you been getting a load of spam in your email recently? What about random calls? It's really annoying, isn't it? Data brokers are out there collecting your personal information. Anything from your email, your full name, your address, and even your political affiliation. Cyber criminals can even use AI to mimic the voices of friends and family to trick people into sending them money. And it gets even worse. People out there are getting huge loans taken out in their names without even knowing about it. But don't worry, because the sponsor of this video, Incogni, can help. They reach out to the data brokers on your behalf and request that your information is removed from their databases. Incogni continues to make sure that your data is removed automatically from the internet via repeated removal requests. So, how can you get started? Well, step one, hit the link in the description. Create an Incogni account and tell us whose data you'd like removed. Step two, grant Incogni the right to work on your behalf. Step three, sit back, relax, and watch Incogni work. They will update consistently so you know when your data has been removed. Incogni is risk-free for 30 days, so you can try it for yourself and you'll get a free refund if the service isn't for you. So take back your personal data today with Incogni. Use the code GBNews using the link in the description below and you'll get 60% off an annual payment plan.
Kai, I guess you're going to have a slightly different view. What do you reckon?
Yeah, no, I agree with the panel because Rachel Reeves has really hemmed herself in a number of ways. Number one, the manifesto pledges not to raise income tax, not to raise VAT, has meant that actually the levers that Rachel Reeves has in the upcoming autumn budget are very few. But then also the fiscal rules that she's created for herself and that she is, keen to stick to means that she has to do this crazy sort of juggling act, as we saw in the last week, when she has to find £14 billion extra, either savings or winnings, to add to the government coffers, just to get her fiscal headroom back. So actually, but then 20 minutes later, after she did her spring statement, Trump put a bomb underneath that all by saying that there's going to be 25% tariffs. No, I'm not saying it's Trump's fault. What I'm saying is that it's short-sighted by Rachel Reeves to tinker around the edges, when actually something like Donald Trump making one announcement could blow it all up again.
What should she do? Tell me.
I think she needs to ditch the fiscal headroom rules that she's created.
We're already at
herself.
100% debt to GDP.
But we're in a crazy, an unprecedented period, I think, at the minute, where I think we are, where geopolitics is completely thrown out of the pram. We don't know exactly how we're going to be achieving growth, but also there's lots of long-term measures that this government is taking, but it's going to take a while. It's going to take
You cut
a while.
welfare in half.
But
you encourage business, small business. That's how you achieve.
But we are. But the Labour government is cutting welfare. And also, Will, to your point, earlier you said, there's 3 things that the Labour government could do and they're not doing any of them. Actually, cutting regulations, they are doing. Cutting the size of the state, they are doing. The only thing that you wanted the Labour government to do that they're not doing is cutting taxes.
Well, that's a biggie, but they're cutting regulation in the property market because Conservative voters in the Tory shires don't vote for them anyway. I think that's a good thing. I agree with it. They've also created millions of new quangos since they started in government.
27.
27, thank you. A rhetorical flourish, but 27 million, same thing. The fact of the matter is that this government doesn't understand how to grow an economy because next to none of them have worked in the private sector. You should be embarrassed that you support a government which basically has a group in cabinet that has been full-time political staffs their whole life and suddenly thinks that they know how to run an economy. They obviously don't, and now the chickens are coming home to roost.
And we're going to feel, all of us in Britain are going to feel the effects next week, awful April, right? We've got national insurance on businesses, that's going up. We've got energy bills, water bills, you name it. It is going to hit people in their wallets massively in the next week or so.
Is awful April now a thing? I didn't know that we've actually now got a term for it.
If it isn't it now, it's right.
Yeah,
awful
I like
April.
that.
But I don't see what any other party could do to differently face up to the fact that global circumstances mean that they've had to act.
I don't know how many times
They've
I've said this.
had to act.
Lower tax, lower regulation, reduce the size of the state. It is so
and they're doing 2 of those 3 things.
I'm going to let Keir just finish off and then
They're doing 2
we'll
of
move
those
on.
3 things, Will.
They're really not.
They are, but they
$5
are.
billion off a welfare bill that's going to reach $100 billion by 2040.
Guys,
but the way to
we
cut
we can talk about this all day, but we've got to move on because we're running out of time. Winter fuel payments cut, inheritance tax hikes on farmers, cuts to welfare, national insurance rises, handing over of the Chagos Islands, many local elections postponed. Did anybody vote for all that? Was it in Labour's manifesto? Have we been scammed? Seconds out, it is round 1. Who's going for it?
Me.
It's you, and of course, it's Kai. I can't imagine Kai's views on this. I'm going to be completely surprised. Right, go for it, guys.
Okay, so, I mean, we almost can't debate this because it's a slam dunk. Yes, we've been scammed. The budget last week was an exercise in gaslighting us, telling us we're much better off. But let's look at the facts. Not in the manifesto was the winter fuel payment that they withdrew from pensioners, leaving them to freeze in their home. Their own report said 4,000 pensioners would die if the Tories did this, and they fought the Tories vigorously. Got into power, took it away, don't care about pensioners. The family farm tax. Steve Reid stood last year and said to the farmers, we will not introduce inheritance tax on your businesses. Keir Starmer said farms are not like other businesses, that people need to understand this. What did they do? Took it away. Why? Because they don't want farms, they want solar panels everywhere, and they want us eating insects, and they don't care about farmers because they think farmers vote for the Tories. National insurance hike. In my GP practice, we may be laying off one receptionist because of this. Hospices will have to use their hard-earned cash, they're all charities, to pay for this. This is a tax on growth. They said they wouldn't tax working people, but they will, because it's working people that are going to lose their jobs. Council tax. They said that we would not see a rise in council tax. Well, everybody is seeing at least 5%. And Angela Rayner let other places, 13 in fact, raise theirs by at least 20. She justified that by saying that by at least 10. She justified that by saying that they'd asked for 20, but she only let them raise it 10%. Gas bills. We were told that they would be going down by £300. They've actually gone up by 18%. Remember, inflation is 2. The WASPy women were told when Labour were in opposition that they deserved compensation and they deserved it quickly. Now they've been told they won't be getting it at all. Chagos Islands was never mentioned, and now they're giving it away and we're going to pay for the pleasure. These people are a joke. They conned us. None of this was in the manifesto. In my opinion, the manifesto should be a legally binding document.
Whew. Kai.
Whew. Fire and brimstone from Dr. Renee. Look, the reality of governing is that you have to make difficult choices, but also that you have to respond and adapt to the reality that you face. And frankly, this Labour government came in with some understanding of the massive fiscal hole left by 14 years of the Conservatives. But actually, I think what they realised pretty early on is that it was much worse than expected. Now, do I really think that the Labour Party and left-wing MPs really want to be taking these measures? You know, cutting winter fuel payments, cutting welfare? Of course they don't. But there are massive trade-offs to be made. And actually, what we need is a sensible, adult government. And that's what I think the Labour Party is showing. And that's, I think, what the British public want. Because, you know, they understand. I think the British public understand that there are difficult choices to be made. But actually, I think they prefer this compared to 5 chancellors between 2019 and 2022, 4 home secretaries, 6 education secretaries. At least we have some stability and some long-term thinking with the Labour government.
Kai, isn't the point that, and we're going to broaden this out to the whole panel now, but Kai, isn't the point that yes, these decisions were unpopular, but the government knew they had to make those decisions, but deliberately did not tell the public in the manifesto in advance. Very different to, say, the Conservative Party in 2010, which warned ahead of time that they were going to implement spending cuts and therefore probably even damage their electoral prospects in that election. But they nonetheless had a clearer mandate for it, right? So they knew they were going to do these things. They knew they were going to raise taxes, but they thought this is going to be unpopular, so let's not say anything before July the 4th.
I don't agree with that characterisation. I do agree that, yes, of course, political parties hold things back to seem palatable. I don't think the Labour Party really had a grasp of how big the problem facing the government is before they were elected.
Really?
I really don't think that. And also, can I just, another thing, and we've made this, we've blurred this line already on this show today. There's a difference between being a party, an opposition party with a skeleton staff, a few dozen people, and being a party of government with tens of thousands of civil servants behind you. Now, you can't model out what would need to be done, what different policies you would have to take to cut this and that versus something else. You can't do that as an opposition party.
Of civil servants to tell you that the national debt is in the trillions and the deficit is adding to it every year.
But what you do need tens of thousands of civil servants for is to find a solution, because I don't see any government across the world finding a solution to the mounting debt.
Kai, you've said about this black hole, okay, and even last week she said 22 billion again, about 17 times. Her very own OBR, who she now puts all of her trust in, said at least 3 months ago that there was no 22 billion black hole. At best, they could find a 9 billion black hole. They couldn't find 22. But if they don't clasp that 22, they've got no reason for making pensioners die in their homes and farmers lose their businesses.
Kai, we'll come back to you, but Luca, do you want to jump in?
I'm going to actually agree with Kai a bit. I mean, someone has to.
Watch those problems.
I know, right. That's my vote crashed. I know, I'll sacrifice
That
myself.
poll is finished.
In that, I think he's right, in that the reality of government is very difficult. And the truth is, I think we have a public and electorate who are quite immature, who often want to have their cake and eat it. I mean, we talked about earlier the needs, we need to, cut taxes, but also then, as soon as, if you cut taxes, you have to cut spending. And that means stuff like winter fuel payment has to go.
I'm sorry, you're now talking nonsense as well. Because if you cut
That's
taxes...
Kai's effect, is it?
Right. If you cut taxes, you get growth. So you actually get more money.
If it was
you
that-
don't get less.
If it was that simple.
But you argued earlier that we need to cut state spending on stuff like
And
welfare.
cut taxes, I said.
Sure, right, but so where would you cut the state spending? Stuff like winter fuel payment for pensioners.
Half of the civil service
Have you seen
do
the
not
benefit-
need to be there.
Have you seen the
That's
benefits
the-
bill?
But that's a tiny fraction. That's a tiny fraction of government
We haven't got
spending.
a huge amount of time. Will?
You cut the benefits bill in
Yeah,
half.
thank you.
Stuff like winter fuel payments.
No.
Is a benefit.
No.
It's a benefit.
Benefits, sickness
Right.
benefits,
But
PIP
we're
benefits.
talking about sickness benefits, disability benefits. There are people out there who we have encouraged to not work because we've got such a low pay economy. We need to pay people more, get them into work, get the economy growing.
The lowest hanging fruit is, of course, getting rid of the triple lock pension, which is a joke and a scandal, frankly,
Oh my
in this
God.
country. It's stayed
Old people
on our
say
nation.
Labour don't like old people. They
Again,
don't care about them.
it's the third debate today where we could talk about it probably for about 6 or 7 hours. But we can't. We've got to move on.